Welcome to the Battle Buddy Podcast with Keith McKeever.
Welcome back, Battle Buddies. I have another guest with me today, and we're going to talk about a little bit about transition, a little bit about some small business, marketing kind of in that digital space. So without further ado, I got Paul Tokgozoglu. Hopefully I pronounced that right this time. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you, Keith. Thanks for having me, man.
So, Paul, what's tell us a little bit about your story. You know, what got young Paul to join the military? What'd you do? Why'd you do it? What was your journey there?
Man, well, thanks for having me on the show again. And so when I was about 19 years old, I had just graduated from high school. I went into community college for 2 years to kind of get some of my education and started that way for a cheaper cost. And I didn't really know what to do. I had no clue about what I wanted to do with my life. And it was feeling like it was about that time to make that decision about like, what is it that I'm actually going to, do here? And didn't really have any real passions in school. Like there wasn't any particular subject that called to me like, oh, I want to be a biologist, or, hey, I love history. Like I love history. I kind of am interested in everything, honestly. So I didn't have any particular calling there. And I went on a study abroad trip to Scotland. And while we were there, we visited the Scottish War Memorial at Edinburgh. And it just really called to me. And I realized, I was like, oh, man, this is something that is greater than me. Like I'm looking for this greater purpose or greater mission to be of service to the world and kind of find my calling. And it kind of clicked for me as I was walking around this beautiful memorial in Edinburgh. If you ever get a chance to go to Edinburgh, it's absolutely amazing. It's inside of the castle on the top of the mountain. That's like incredible.
A bucket list item for probably half the people in the world. That sounds like an amazing trip.
It was fantastic. So really beautiful memorial, and it kind of like clicked for me on that moment. I was like, aha, this could be it. Like this is that purpose. Like what a great tradition. And, military is wonderful and great way to serve and this, that, the other thing. So I got it in my head, like, oh man, this is it. This is the thing that I'm going to go out there and do. And it just, for some reason, just called to me, like this is what you got to do. And so I did ROTC. I went to a college and did ROTC for 3 years. And then I commissioned as an officer in the military police corps on active duty. And I went to training, and then I got stationed in Germany, overseas. And pretty much right away, I realized like, man, I don't think this is actually it. Like, I don't know if this is actually what I'm supposed to be doing. And I was really grateful for the experience. Like I learned so much, especially about leadership and about myself and about mental toughness and all the great stuff that you get from being in the military. But it was pretty clear to me once I got on active duty, like, man, I don't know if this is what I'm supposed to do forever, and it kind of just because I just didn't seem like my lifestyle. Just wasn't as into it as everyone else, I guess you could say. Like once I actually got into the grind, so to speak. And pretty soon, like as the months rolled by, I started to have a lot of issues. I started to have a lot of kind of mental health problems that a lot of my peers weren't having. And for some reason, it just I just couldn't really be in the environments that we were working in. Like it was always so loud for me, or it just seemed really overwhelming. And I started to have panic attacks almost every single day before I would go to work. And we weren't doing anything particularly stressful. Like anyone who's worked at a S3 shop will tell you, it's not the most stressful stuff you can do in the military by any stretch of the imagination.
Definitely
especially not when you're not especially when you're not deployed and you're in garrison. Like we worked long hours and there was definitely, a lot to do, but it wasn't like traumatic or stressful, And so I was like, man, why am I having all these issues? Why is it so hard for me to just go to work and function like everyone else? So I got some help, and I went and got into therapy, and I worked with someone who specializes in helping adults kind of figure out what it is that they're working what it is they're working through. And she helped me realize that I'm on the autism spectrum, and I am very sensitive to like my environment, very sensitive to the world around me. And this person was a civilian therapist. So it wasn't through the military that I got this diagnosis. It was on the civilian side. And yeah, she diagnosed me as on the autism spectrum. And really, I worked with her for a couple years and kind of learned some coping mechanisms and kind of figured out that, maybe this just isn't the right career path for me because I'm obviously a bit higher functioning. But yeah, when you're having panic attacks every day, though, you definitely don't feel so high functioning. So she kind of helped me to learn some coping mechanisms, and I really kind of doubled down on self-care and taking good care of myself. And the panic attack stopped, but I realized, like, this probably isn't the career for me. If loud noises cause me to go into a shutdown state, then working around guns all the time might not be the best career path, and
That's a
honestly,
good
just
point.
work in an office, I found like for example, if other people are talking near me, like right now I'm in this room alone, but if someone were like over there talking or on the computer, I wouldn't be able to have this conversation. It's like it's so loud. Like I would have to ask them to stop. Like if someone else is working in the same room as me and they're typing or they're talking on the phone, like I just can't function. I can't. It's really tough. So I basically kind of had this epiphany, like, oh man, I gotta do something else with my life where it's kind of a better fit for me, a better fit for my mental health. And so I eventually got out of the army. Again, I did kind of learn some coping mechanisms that I was able to last another few years, but I transitioned out because I realized like I need something that's better for my mental health, for kind of who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing. So I found out about online entrepreneurship and digital marketing and podcasting. And I was really into Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan's podcast. I still love those guys. And, it really inspired me with podcasting. And I was just always listening to podcasts. I was just constantly binging them, trying to gain all this information that I could to help me figure out like what is it that I'm supposed to actually be doing in the world and how can I do that and how can I create a better life. And yeah, it led me towards starting my own podcast and going off from there. So I got out of the army back in 2020. And ever since then, I've been working and helping people launch podcasts, produce them, grow them through advertising, and grow their business around them. And for the most part, other than whenever we meet up and maybe do like a live mastermind or something, it's been 100% online, and just been way better fit for my mental health and my family. And yeah, everything's gotten better. I moved out to the middle of nowhere here in Missouri and pretty much live off grid these days. And that's a lot better for my mental health, is what I found, is living in the forest, kind of surrounded by nature. Been a
A
lot
little
happier
quieter,
ever
huh?
since. So yeah. Oh yeah. Military was great, and I'm super grateful for the experience. Like I learned so much, but ultimately, not for me. But what I learned is that pretty much any office job, probably not for someone like me. So yeah, really passionate about digital marketing and entrepreneurship. And yeah, that was a little long winded, but I hope that kind of gives a background into me and what I've been up to and how I've been trying to help people the last couple years.
Actually, there's actually a few similarities in our story because I started my podcast after being somebody who would listen to them all the time. As a realtor, I'd be on the road for 20 minutes here, 40 minutes there, and I mean I've always liked music, but at some point in time, it just kind of switched with me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna start listening to podcasts." Right, probably about the time that I started getting unlimited streaming through my phone, and wasn't going to cost an arm and a leg for all that extra data. But so I started listening to them, listening to all kinds of different podcasts. And then when kind of the pandemic hit, it was like I had this idea, this seed in the back of my mind, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna start one. I'm gonna go buy a microphone and a webcam, and I'm gonna figure this out some way, shape, or form. And here we are, 2 years later. But so I'm kind of curious on the career choice because I don't know how that goes for officers. Did you get a much or any choice in what career you ended up in, or was that just luck? Because I could see that you could have ended up in the army potentially doing something else with tanks, artillery, something like that. That could have been a wildly different experience for you.
Yep. Yeah, no, I picked it. I actually signed on for a little longer on my contract so I could be a military police officer. This is getting into the weeds a little bit, but back then I had it in my head that like maybe a great career choice for me after the military would be like the FBI or some sort of federal law enforcement. And just because that's what my dad did. My dad's worked for the Department of Defense my whole life. So I was like, I want to kind of continue that tradition or continue that
Yeah,
legacy.
why not work for the
And then
feds? I
again,
mean,
yeah, I mean, it seemed like a good, safe career sort of thing. And, but again, once I got into it and once I started working in that office environment, it's pretty clear to me like, no, I'm meant to do something completely different, meant to do something more entrepreneurial. And again, online, to kind of living wherever I want, working my own hours. And, so I abandoned that pretty quick, but that's why I chose military police was because I was thinking FBI or, something like that. So I wanted something that would give me some sort of law enforcement experience. And, I thought that would carry over well into kind of whatever I did next. But I ended up doing something else. But
well,
the
you never know what you're
leadership
gonna do.
experience was great. Oh yeah, so I learned a lot about leadership though. I mean, as an officer, especially when I was a platoon leader, learned a lot about leadership. Made a shit ton of mistakes for sure. Definitely had some great talks with the commander or the higher ups about ways to improve myself.
Mhm. Great talk.
And it was a Oh yeah, but they were like in the moment. Obviously, if the commander calls you into your office, you're fearing the worst, and sometimes you do
Yeah,
get whooped upside the head. But at the end of the day, all of those chats or all of those things that happened to me, they were great in hindsight. Like they're all really good learning experiences. But again, the big learning experience for me overall was that, hey, the military is probably not the best career for me. And, I'm probably better suited for something else. But I really did learn a lot about leadership and definitely learned a lot about what not to do in leadership, I would say. And
I
both from
think we
my own
all learn that.
actions and also, yep, definitely from my own actions, but also having people above me that may not have had my best interests at heart. So I learned a lot about what not to do, and I've applied that now to when we're running companies or helping people build teams, and it's invaluable experience. So at the end of the day, I'm super grateful for it, and you know, here I am today doing something
Yeah.
else.
Well, it also provided a lot of, I'm sure, a lot of reflection and perspective in your life, especially with the diagnosis of being on the autism spectrum, and entrepreneurship would seem like it'd be a great fit for that because you can kind of have a little bit of control in your environment and what you do. Because I mean, there's just so many infinite ways, different things you can do in the entrepreneurship world. But what was that transition process like then? Because that had to be different for you with trying to figure out like what's next and what can fit with my diagnosis and what's not going to give me problems and stuff like that. Additional things on top of what maybe other people have for transition.
So I started it years before I ever actually left the military. So I started my first podcast in 2016 when I was in Poland working at NATO, and which was a fun experience. But I had a lot of free time working at NATO, and so I started a podcast during that period. And it was the first show that I did was about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I've been involved in the martial arts since I was a kid, really passionate about it. So I was like, don't know what to talk about. Might as well talk about martial arts and jiu-jitsu. So that was the first
Certainly
podcast,
helps if it's
and
something
I
you know
interviewed.
about.
Oh yeah, and I interviewed a lot of people in the jiu-jitsu world. It was really fun. Like Dean Lister was probably the most notable person I had on the show, and got to meet a lot of my jiu-jitsu heroes and stuff like that, and talk to them on the podcast. And I did that for about a year and a half. And during that time, I was using social media marketing to grow the podcast. And again, I was still in the military at the time. I was just starting my platoon leader time at this moment. So I was real busy and had a lot going on. But I learned the basics of social media marketing to help me promote the show and help me to grow what I was doing with the podcast. And then one of my friends who I had interviewed on the podcast before he asked me if I wanted to do that for his brand. And he had a yoga company, Yoga for BJJ, that does online yoga videos for jiu-jitsu people. And still there, yogaforbjj.net. You can check it out. And shout out to my friend Sebastian. And he was my first client, to hire me for social media marketing. And he basically said, he was like, hey, man, I've been watching what you do on social media, really like it. Why don't you come do that for me and just post for our brand, once a day on Facebook and Instagram. So it's really simple. And I got paid like $350 a month. Like, so it wasn't much at all, but it was the start. It was my first real gig, and it was really fun, and I learned a lot. So I worked with him for a little over a year, just running their social media pages and kind of learning the basics of that, and really learned a lot through that. And then I got into running kind of bigger social media platforms where I was posting maybe 3 or 4 times a day on multiple different platforms, stuff like that for other companies, obviously getting paid more for that. And I also got into advertising, and I learned all about Facebook ads and Instagram ads and Reddit ads and all these different ways to run advertising. And I started also offering that to people. And all the people that I met through, all the people who were hiring hiring me for these things, I met them all through the podcast, is what I was trying to say. So these were all people that I interviewed on the podcast. They seen what I did on social media to promote my own stuff. And, I just maybe was playing around with Facebook ads for myself, and I was publishing some of the results that I was getting. And then people would just reach out and say, hey, can you help me out with that? Like what you're doing for yourself. And that's how I got my first kind of handful of clients. And again, I was still a platoon leader at this time. I was still working full time in the military, and I was doing this a few hours like nights and weekends. So it was definitely a bit of a grind and definitely a very, very steep learning curve. But I also kind of volunteered at the jiu-jitsu school where I was practicing, and I helped them build their website. I helped them do some basic advertising and, kind of help them as well. So I was doing a lot of free work to build a portfolio and just to get experience. Like, if you've read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he talks about how entrepreneurs work for free, especially when they're getting started. And that is 100% true. So in the beginning, you got to just work for free, basically like an intern, or work for, a lower amount of money because you just need some experience. So it's really just like whatever you can get to help you build a portfolio and kind of get those first couple clients under your belt. Like, do basically whatever it takes, obviously, within integrity. You don't want to do anything. Do whatever it takes to get those first few clients. That sounds a little sketchy, but
Yeah, a little bit.
do whatever you need to do. Do whatever you need to do to kind of get those first like 3 to 5 clients. And from there, once you kind of have that experience and you have a portfolio, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to quit your job and go out and do bigger and better things and get paid the market price, so to speak. And for these services like social media marketing or advertising, you can charge $1,000 to $2,000 a month for just doing the service. Obviously, it depends a lot though on how good you are and what sorts of results you've gotten in the past. Because if you suck, no one's going to pay you that. But if you're good at what you do and you can actually get results, you might only need 3 or 4 clients to replace your active duty income. So that was my case. I didn't need too many clients. I only needed 4 people paying me that amount of money to transition out of the military. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I had to put in a lot of work and a lot of hours, nights and weekends while I was still working full time to get that experience, and also to go through that learning curve, because there's a huge learning curve when it comes to social media or building funnels or podcasting or just anything related to entrepreneurship. Honestly, like, there's gonna be a learning curve if you're doing it yourself. I mean, if you have the money to invest in yourself, then you can hire a coach or you can hire someone to do it for you. But when you're just getting started, probably not going to have an extra, $2,000 a month to throw at a coach or a service provider, because you're probably going to need that money to pay your bills and, get your own business kind of off the ground. So
Absolutely.
so I guess I wanted to kind of take you on that journey just to show that, like, it's not an overnight thing. It's not like I decided, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and then next week I got out of the military. It was like, years before I got out of the Army, I had made the decision that this is what I wanted to do. And then it took years to build up the experience and I guess the clout that I needed to kind of get out and do something else. And but really it's the skill set. I had to develop the skill set that I needed to make me valuable enough that I could go out there and charge a real price for my services. So basically just kind of waited until I got to that point where I could actually do that. And then I got out and, waited, didn't sign back up basically. And then I got out and then here I am, doing that. And it was definitely, especially because I got out right before the pandemic and everyone was a little short on cash. Like it was definitely an uphill battle, but yeah, with, as they say, with hard work and willpower, like you can do whatever. So you just got to work for it
Absolutely.
and put in the hours and fucking not give up, just like anything else.
Yeah. And, you had told me that before, that you got out right before the pandemic. And that was a question I was going to ask is, what kind of unique challenges do you think that presented to you in that, or somebody who's been, got out in these last couple of years? It's got to be a wildly different experience.
Yep. So it was really just that, again, like I had the clout, I had the experience. I had clients pay me maybe 2,500 a month to be managing their accounts like beforehand or something like that. So again, like if inside of the military, I was making like, I don't know, like 5,500 a month or 6,000 a month. I don't have it would vary depending on where you live, because in Germany you get more stuff
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
all
But
the
anyway,
cost of living
around like,
amounts and all that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, around 5,500 a month, something like that. So I really only, going off of like the market value, if I'm getting paid 2,500 a month, I only need like, two people to replace that income, right? Well, after the pandemic, everyone was short on cash. Everyone was saving away for the apocalypse. Everyone was trying to be stingy and kind of hold on to everything because no one knew what was going to
Including
happen,
toilet
right?
paper.
And yeah, everyone's hoarding toilet paper, and basically every non-essential service was suffering. So one of my mentors, Alex Sharfin, he put it so well during the pandemic. He was saying like, if you're not an essential business, you're going to suffer. That's the long and short of it, because people can't afford anything except what's essential right now. So in other words, if you're in the insurance business, that's an essential thing. You're probably not going to be hurting. But if you're a digital marketer, a social media marketer, like that's not exactly an essential service that people like are required to have. So what it worked out to was I just wasn't able to charge enough for my services. Like everyone that I talked to was strapped for cash. And it might have just been me, like maybe I wasn't networking in the right circles, or maybe I don't know, but whatever was happening was I wasn't able to connect with the right people that had the money like I was used to. So I was
Well, I think the
charging a fraction of what I normally would charge. So whereas normally I would charge maybe $1,000 for something, now I could only charge 500 because that's literally all they had budgeted for this. So it was I was still able to make a living. I was still able to pay the bills, thankfully, thanks to a lot of goodwill and a lot of wonderful people that helped me out and hired me for some work and included me in their budget, I guess you could is the way to think about it. But I had to take on 3 or 4 times as much work as I might have had to as otherwise. So it's just a lot of hours. Again, like when right after the pandemic, like I'd get done with work every day at like 7 or 8 p.m. Working on my computer because I just had a lot of clients. I was managing like 5 or 6 different accounts and trying to do stuff for a bunch of different people. So it just wasn't sustainable. So I ended up linking up with Zach Babcock, who's my business partner now. And I started out helping him with his business. And that basically developed into a full-time gig where now we work together. We run the business together. And we've also got another business partner in the mix now, Tim Holloway. And we've grown Podcast Powertrain over the last 2 years. And yeah, we've helped about over 300 people with launching podcasts. And that's kind of where I've dove in the last couple of years, is just kind of all into the podcasting space. And it's a lot better because then I only have, one thing to focus on rather than 5 or 6. So I was able
Yeah.
to find that one relationship that made a big difference, which was the relationship with Zach. And, ever since then, I've been squared away.
Yeah, it was something you kind of said back there, around the business and kind of people affording different things. I think for a lot of people, it was they got to put their money into those necessities, right? And toilet paper was a necessity when there was like hardly any on the shelf. And paying your light bill, your water bill, like those are necessities. And I think a lot of small businesses, even big businesses, got caught in a position where they were not prepared for a pandemic. Of course, nobody was prepared for it, but had no systems in place to really deal with this. It has turned everything upside down. And I certainly hope that a lot of entrepreneurs or even the big businesses learn from these last couple of years and say, all right, if it's happened now, it could happen again. We better plan for this accordingly, both policy and procedures for things, but financially. We need to be able to position ourselves strategically to be able to handle it better. Because I don't know about you, but where I'm from, I've seen a lot of restaurants, a lot of small mom and pop shops. They've closed up doors in the last couple of years. They just could not hang on. Some of these were businesses that have been around for 50, 60 years. And they built quite a reputation, quite a brand, and they just could not sustain it, especially during the height of the pandemic when nobody was, allowed to go sit down and eat in a restaurant. Some of these places didn't have the facilities to do carry out as effectively as others, and causes a lot of problems. That's just one business type example, but the I'm sure there's some opportunities in there. Have you seen anything over these last couple of years as you kind of navigated this transition process and all the podcasting stuff that you think is an opportunity for people?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say definitely podcasting, honestly, and starting your own platform. Like that's where everything is moving. Is all of us are a media company. So this podcast that I'm, guesting on right now, this is your media channel in the same way that CNN is the government's media channel to spew out all their baloney. And but you get to have your own platform here inside of the digital space where you can say whatever you want. Your freedom of speech it can be exercised here. And that's something I'm super passionate about, especially right now, is enabling people to express themselves, enabling people to exercise their freedom of speech, because I think that is something that is under attack right now. And a lot of people getting triggered by the truth that's getting dropped everywhere. And people are trying to censor these opinions. And having a podcast or having a blog or having a YouTube channel or having something that's your own platform, like it bulletproofs you against where everything is, where the future is headed. And it helps you to have your own platform where you can network, you can create things, and you can ultimately start your own business and build a dominant brand around this platform that you're creating, around this media channel that you've created here, in the same way that Netflix is a media platform. So you got to kind of switch into that mindset of saying like, hey, I'm going to have an online platform that people can listen to anywhere in the world that's going to empower them. It's going to build a community. It's going to create a network and build a tribe, really build some sort of online community where people can they can meet up with other people like them. They can coordinate and communicate with each other. That's a big reason why we launched Alpha Podcasters, which is the link that's scrolling right now at alphapodcasters.com. It's a mighty network. It's not hosted on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, because those platforms, their algorithm inherently censors a lot of this information. And that's why we switched over to Mighty Networks, because they don't have an algorithm. So it's kind of a censorship-free platform where people can converse. They can talk about whatever they want. They can hang out, and they don't have to worry about some social media algorithm hiding posts from them because it might be controversial, or it might have some word that triggers the secret robot to come in and delete that post or hide it from the masses, or some craziness. So
Throw you in
that's something we're
Facebook
super
jail for 5
passionate
days.
about. And yeah, exactly. It's stupid. So we're real passionate about Mighty Networks and getting people off of social media, getting them to listen to podcasts or, something like that, because I think that is the big opportunity right now, is starting your own platform, in the online world, because, well, for one, you can then create that in the physical world. So if you have a giant audience, like what we're doing, we're going to be having a live event here in April. We're going to be doing probably another one over the summer, and to meet up with our community in person. That's something we did last year too, is we had some masterminds where we met up with elite podcasters in different places like Florida or Arizona or Austin, Texas. And it was a lot of fun. It was really rewarding to meet up in person and kind of build that community and build that tribe, because that's what society needs right now. Is we need community. We need to get back to meeting up in person and having live events, and we need to get over everything that's been happening in the last couple of years and kind of move on and progress as a species, really, and
I think we would
evolve
all
to
like
that
to
next
move on
level.
past all this for sure.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, man. So I'm super passionate about that. I think that that's really the big opportunity for people, is, again, like, use the internet, use this new kind of movement into the digital space to build your platform, to get your voice out there through a podcast, and then use that podcast to then build community and gather those people somewhere like Mighty Networks, where you can, host your own community, and then start to meet up in person, start to facilitate live events or put together a mastermind or maybe a workshop or something, just anything where you're meeting up with people maybe in your city or in your region or something like that. Like, that's where people need to be moving right now.
It's a great place to position yourself for business too, because everybody should pretty much be aware that audio and video is ruling the direction everything's going. It's not just me saying it. Gary Vaynerchuk and many other people are out there have been screaming it from the mountaintops for years that you need to be doing one or both. And that's how you build your brand, is by letting people know who you are. And you can do that through podcasting. You could do it through a vlog. You could do it through just doing Facebook Lives. Like, there's so many different ways you can do it, but you gotta do that, because you got to be where people's attention is. And that kind of leads to the next question, because you've been in the business development and social media, and so marketing, branding, advertisements, they're all different, but they're all intermingled, right? They're in the same web of sorts. So what kind of advice did you have on those people who do have a small business, or budding entrepreneurs, for keeping their message consistent across those?
I think you got to be real clear on who you're talking to. So it's all about knowing everything there is to know about your ideal avatar, as we say. So, for example, this podcast here, you're speaking to a very specific kind of person. I mean, even just with the name, the Battle Buddy Podcast, like, it's pretty clear to anyone in the military, this show's probably for military members or veterans, because Battle Buddy is in our vernacular, right? Like, someone who's never been in the military, they are not going to resonate with that phrase. They might not even have ever heard it before. So someone who's in the military, they're like, oh, the Battle Buddy Podcast. Got it. Like, for military people, you got the flag, you got everything behind you. You got all what's it called? The certificates. Everything that I'm looking at behind you in the video. Like, it's very clear to anyone who's watching or listening. They're like, oh, this is a podcast for military members, for veterans. Like, you're super clear on who you're speaking to. There's a lot of podcasts where they're not very clear. They're not very focused on who they're talking to. Or there's a lot of small businesses out there that are serving everyone. Like, they're trying to please everyone. They're trying to market to every single person. And that's just not going to work. You got to be super clear on who this is for, who you're trying to reach. And because then when you get into that, you can start to adjust your marketing message for those people's psychology specifically. So one of the big things that you want to identify is, where are they at emotionally when they encounter your information, and where are you going to take them? So Russell Brunson calls this the epiphany bridge. You got to build an epiphany bridge for your audience, where you're going to help them have an epiphany through your marketing message that's going to illuminate for them that they need to listen to you, that you've got the answers, that you understand them, and you just help them have this big epiphany for their situation. So, for example, for me, on our podcast that we do, Podcast Powertrain, We got a podcast about podcasting. We call it the most meta podcast in the world. But it's all about how to build a dominant brand with a podcast. So on the podcast Powertrain podcast, we were talking about, how the podcast, building that and creating that, that's the epiphany that we want people to have. It's like, oh, I'm trying to start a business. I'm trying to grow the business, trying to grow my network, trying to make more money. I'm trying to build influence. Like, what's the thing I'm supposed to do? We come in and we say, oh, it's starting a podcast. That's what you need to do. That's the epiphany that we're trying to help people have. So then they have that epiphany through storytelling, through listening to us, through us communicating our story and our message, because that's what happened to me. That was the missing link for me, is I needed to start a podcast. So if we can get people to realize and believe that one thing, that they need to start a podcast in order to build a dominant brand, then we can then take them with us on the journey. Then we can start to say, okay, here's how you set it up. Here's how you record your first episode. Here's how you make a lead magnet. Here's how you set up your interview stuff. Here's how you get guests booked on your podcast. Like, we can't get into any of that stuff, though, if we haven't first convinced you that you need to start a podcast. It'd be the same thing if we were trying to do this. Maybe if I'd started a YouTube channel and I was passionate about YouTube channels, then, it might be a similar sort of thing. But that's that's what every business needs to be creating. So, going back to like a mom and pop business real quick, like let's say that you're a mom and pop restaurant in a small city and you're trying to differentiate people. You're trying to differentiate yourself in your local community. You need to have something about you that is unique and different and appeals to a certain segment of the people in your community. And you need to help them have this epiphany of how coming to your restaurant and eating where you are and having that experience, like maybe you have live music or something like that. Why are people going out to eat? They're trying to have a good time. They're trying to connect with people. They're probably going to bring some friends or family with them. They're trying to have a good time. So you need to help them see, why should they come to you? Why should they come to your restaurant and spend their time there? Maybe you have live music. Maybe you have some special thing that you do at the restaurant. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a certain kind of people hang out at your restaurant. Maybe there's a cover fee to get in and it's an exclusive sort of thing. Like, there could be any number of ways to do this, but you need to,
some businesses have to really differentiate. Something. Like pizza joints, like my town's probably got 7 pizza joints in it. We want pizza. It's like, okay, where do we order from? Well, it's usually, what are the other items that you get with it? That'll determine which direction we go. Because most of them are carry out. They don't have dining in. There's no live music. Like, to your point, like, they have to differentiate themselves in one way, shape, or form and appeal to the consumer. To paint that picture differently.
That's it, man. No, that's it, man. And it's all about, how do you separate yourself in the marketplace? What epiphany are you trying to help people have? And who is your ideal customer or client or listener?
Absolutely. That's some good advice there. Where do you think, in 2022 that these small businesses, all these veteran entrepreneurs out there, these small businesses, where do you think they can make their biggest impact in the digital marketing space?
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but really it's all about, again, starting a platform, getting your message out there. Because here's the thing, you could throw money at advertising all day, but if you don't have a good brand message and you don't have an actual platform that you're driving people to, you're going to waste that money. I mean, you can do, yeah, exactly. If you don't have a basics of, storytelling and, you don't have the basics of just kind of getting your brand message out there, you're not going to actually build a community. You're not going to actually get people interested in you and what you're doing. So any business out there can start a podcast, can start a YouTube channel. If you're listening to this and the idea of speaking to people or start being on camera or being on audio, if that terrifies you and you're just super uncomfortable, great. Start a blog, start a local blog, do writing, learn keyword research, learn how to get your blog ranked on Google. And, blogging is an introvert's best friend. So learn, start a blog, whatever it is, start a platform, publish content regularly. make it really good content, like put your heart and soul into this content, make it really freaking good, because you got to obviously separate it from the marketplace, because there's so many people out there who are doing this. And then if you're going to run advertising, you can run advertising direct to that resource. So if you make a podcast to help advertise your small business, you can then run advertising to that podcast. You can have a call to action on that podcast episode that then drives people to your business, but at the end of the day, having a platform, it's going to allow you to network like crazy. It's going to help you get your message out there, and it's going to help you market and grow the business in the online space. There's definitely a place for advertising as well, especially if you're, a gym, or if you're again, like a restaurant or something that's really kind of like, hey, you want to work out? Here's where you work out. You want to eat? Here's a place to eat. Like, so that's a place where, some Google pay-per-click advertising that might be super beneficial for you in your local area. So let's say that you're in St. Louis and you've got a martial arts school. Might be really beneficial to invest, a couple $100 a month in advertising on Google, so that way whenever someone searches St. Louis martial arts school, you show up right at the top. Like, stuff like that is kind of super simple, just kind of the basics of pay-per-click advertising. So that's a little bit more direct than having a podcast and sending people there. So you can do both of those. But if we're talking about like, how are you going to impact the world? Like, how are you going to get outside of your local area and actually grow the business into something, bigger than it is now? If you want to actually grow your influence and network like crazy, start a podcast or start a YouTube channel, or again, start a blog, and use that as your vehicle to get this message and get your brand out there to the world, build a community, and, freaking go from there.
You said something a second ago, landing page, and we kind of talked about call to action and stuff like that on ads. And it just kind of got me a little off my question script here, but I'm just curious because I know where I stand on it. This may ruffle some feathers for those small business owners out there that are this way. But what are your thoughts on people starting a business and only using a Facebook page and calling it their website?
Yeah, it's no good. You got to definitely have a website, or else you're not going to get ranked on Google. And especially if you're a small business, you need to get ranked on Google, especially in your local area, because that's where people are searching for you. So you have to learn the basics of search engine optimization for your website, or hire someone who does know that to build your website. But yeah, you gotta have that. Now, if you're just getting started out and it's day one and you're strapped for cash and you don't have, money to pay for a website guy, cool. Build something on Squarespace, build something for free on WordPress, build something on one of these funnel building sites like Samcart, or any of these other platforms that are out there where you can build a basic funnel or build a basic landing page. But you got to have something, because especially if you're trying to get on Google, if you're a local small business, you got to get on Google. You got to do the Google My Business, where you can show up on Google Maps and all this stuff, and then they're going to let you have a link to your website right there. So that way, people that are searching in your local market can search on Google for, again, like maybe martial arts schools in St. Louis. You show up there at the top, your website will show up there on the right-hand side in the little square search area on Google. And you want to have the website right there where they can click and find out more information. So yeah, if you just got the Facebook page, here's one little hack though that I learned from one of my mentors, Mike Stewart, a couple of years ago in the martial arts community. What Mike does, he's got multiple different gyms. He's got multiple jiu-jitsu schools in Maryland, and he makes a different social media page for each one. So he's got like 4 or 5 different gyms. Each one of them has a social media page, and he also has a website. So if you Google and if you search for martial arts schools in Maryland, he shows up not just with one website, but actually with 5 or 6, because the Facebook pages, the Instagram pages, they all rank on Google too. So you want to definitely have those. And actually, like I'm saying, if you have multiple locations, you want to have a different Facebook page for each one, because it'll all rank on Google together. So that way, instead of just having the one thing on Google, you've got, 10, or you've got 10 different pages there on Google when someone pulls it up. So that way you just, demolish the competition by taking over the first page of Google. Like I remember this kind of sunk in for me when he showed me his ranking on Google for his local area. He took like a screenshot of it, and literally the whole front page of Google was just him. His competitors were nowhere to be seen because he had so many different assets. He had one website and like 10 different social media pages. And if you looked up martial arts schools in Maryland, looked like it was just him, basically, even though there might be 10 other schools around. So that's huge. So you definitely want to do both.
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely want to not just have one Facebook page or one Instagram page. Like that's nothing.
I see that a lot, and I would agree that in the beginning, yeah, you can set it up free, easy to manage, Facebook page, maybe an Instagram too. But at some point in time, if you're going to do any kind of ads, you need a website. You need to be able to put landing pages on there, and websites are not that difficult. My website, the battlebuddypodcast.net, is Squarespace. My real estate one is on Squarespace. It's easy. It's click, drag over. They have little pop-up buttons to explain things to you if you don't know it, but I can make tweaks in 5 minutes. Every single week I go on there and I'm throwing the podcast videos on there every single Sunday, or Wednesday when they drop. I'll put them on there. I'll put the links to everything. It's just easy. You set it up and it's there. You just got to go in and make, 5-10 minute tweaks a couple times a week, add different stuff to it. So it's easy. And, there's always YouTube too. You can go to YouTube. You could Google your questions. YouTube will walk you right through things. But that reminds me of another thing that you mentioned, like Google ranking. Like, I don't know the exact order, but I don't think Facebook is going to be ranking in the top 10 or maybe 15 or 20 search engines in the world like Google and YouTube are right there at 1 and 2. Nothing is going to get you higher than being there on both of those platforms.
Yep.
And
you
have to.
People do search on Facebook, but their search algorithm sucks. So, you might show up, but really Google is the king. And your Facebook page though will show up on Google. But again, like you want to have that website because the website's going to show up a lot better on Google, if that makes sense. Gonna rank a lot higher usually.
Yeah, one of my thoughts on Facebook is that the page is a good kind of a landing spot. You should have consistent information being posted. You should have good content. You should have all your contact information, bio, all that stuff should be set. But really, you should be sharing that stuff on your personal page. And if you're going to make Facebook work for you, I think you need to have your personal connections referring you in other posts where somebody says, hey, I need a person that does X, Y, and Z. And they want people to think, hey, my friend John Doe over there does X, Y, and Z. And they start tagging your personal page in there, and then you can carry on that conversation and be like, hey, if you'd like to know more about me, here's my Facebook page, here's my website, whatever. Or get a link tree or something along those lines. Have all your links in it. You can be able to share it easy with people. But, that's some of my 2 cents on the whole business things and things that I see out there. So I figured you'd have similar viewpoints. So speaking of messaging, we wrap this up, but you have taken not only this podcasting thing, but just sharing messages to a different level. And you mentioned CNN earlier. We kind of mentioned news, and we know a lot of the stuff that's on the news, regardless of what side you lean. And I don't try and get political on here, but everybody has their opinions on both sides. One thing that is missing is positive news. And so you have started something with some positive news. Can you share that with us? What you're doing there?
Absolutely. So I started a new podcast a couple of weeks ago called Trinity Media News. And we just launched and we hit number 85 in the USA for daily news, which was awesome. We also hit, I think, like 103 in Canada, which was really encouraging. But the whole concept of the show is we're going around and sitting down with people and reporting on positive news stories from around the world. So anyone who's doing good and who's trying to make an impact and change their community, or maybe someone who's gone on a really wild journey and they've gone on a lot of self-development and we want to highlight them and kind of what they're doing. Like one of our members in Alpha Podcasters, TJ Bell, just had him on the show and to do a story about how he recovered from a lifetime of alcoholism. And he went on to launch a top rated podcast. And he's now using his podcast to grow his network and start his business and change his whole life. And really just wanted to highlight what he was doing, because I know a lot of people who are struggling with addiction right now. So wanted to kind of showcase that story of like, hey, look, here's someone that just got over all of that. Last year is when he quit the alcohol. Like, I think he's almost a year sober. And, just want to say like, hey, look at what this guy's doing. He's starting a business. He's got a top rated podcast. He's using it to grow his network, like doing good stuff, like literally anything that is positive. Because what you find when you start to do this, when you start to look into stuff like this, another story just real quick is Gary Roberts, who is opening up treatment centers in South America to help people who need access to psychedelic medicines to heal from PTSD. So there's all sorts of studies going out right now from Johns Hopkins talking about the effect of psilocybin or MDMA to reverse the effects of PTSD. So, we did a story about Gary and what he's doing in South America to open up therapy centers where people can go down there and they can even get a sponsorship, if they don't have the money to go, and they can get that healing and get therapy to kind of help them integrate. So basically anything. And again, what you do when we started going down this rabbit hole is there's so much more good news that's happening than bad news. There's actually, from where I'm sitting, astronomically more good news happening than bad news. And the mainstream media has a vested financial interest in getting you hooked on fear. Like, I call them like the fear report, basically. So what they do is they find whatever's the worst thing happening in the world today, and we're going to shine a spotlight on that. So did someone get shot in Baltimore? Did 2 people get shot in a drive-by shooting? That's going to be breaking news. Meanwhile, there might be someone down the road or a couple blocks away who, again, just quit alcoholism and now they're launching a business, and they're changing their life around and they're impacting people. Like, really sucks that those 2 people got shot. Like, that really fucking stinks. But, we can also talk about the 10 other great things that happen in that same area, or these other people that are doing really good things. And I think if we just shift that viewpoint, I think it'll change everything. So that's really what we're trying to do, is change the narrative and make it more about like shining a light on good stuff and highlighting people doing good things and going from there, and because honestly, the way we see it, man, is the danger report over at mainstream media. Like, they got the bad news covered, so we don't really need to report on the bad news. Like, people already getting that, hand over fist. So we're trying to just focus on the positive stuff and kind of go from there.
And there's more than enough people out there that are doing some good, positive things. And, I would say largely, a lot of them, it just goes unnoticed. It's just people doing good things out of the kindness of their heart or overcoming things. And, it's good to see somebody have a little light shine on them for doing the right thing or, succeeding. So that's awesome stuff. That was trinitymedianetwork.org. Is that your website for that?
Yep. TrinityMediaNetwork.org is the website, and the podcast is called Trinity Media News. So you can look it up on Apple or Spotify. And again, alphapodcasters.com is the community where you can join for free and learn about how to start your podcast and network with other podcast creators. And, if you got a question, just post it in there and we'll help you out.
Yeah, it's a cool platform. After we talked, I think about a week ago, I went in there and signed up, and I was just talking to a guy who was telling you this before we started recording. And I was talking to a guy, he put something in there with the things he talks about. And I thought, hey, this could be a great guest for my show. We've been collaborating back and forth, and, in just a week, I found a lot of value in that already. And quite honestly, I probably only spent 20, 25 minutes in there. So, basically setting up my profile and then engaging in 1 or 2 conversations and connecting with some people. So if you're in that podcasting space, I highly recommend that you go check that out and see if it can, be of value to you. And once again, Paul, I appreciate you coming on here and being a battle buddy and sharing your story and your message. And hopefully that inspires or educates somebody to, maybe pick up a microphone and hit record and start sharing their story or whatever it is in their heart or their brain that they want to talk about. So There's a lot of power to it. And you kind of mentioned earlier, like networking, it's incredible. If anybody's thinking about being a podcaster, definitely reach out to Paul, get in the Alpha Podcasters, get his expertise on it. But, if you ever want to have a conversation with me, about my thoughts or opinions or little tips and tricks that kind of helped, I'd be more than happy to kind of share my 2 cents. I'll be honest, I don't have it all figured out yet, but it's a learning process as we go through it. So I just say, do it. That's the best thing to do is just start. So any last words, Paul?
Yeah, just I want to highlight more what you said, like just start, whatever it is. And what we found, man, working with hundreds of podcasters and content creators, the number one thing that holds people back is a limiting belief of putting themselves out there. People are scared that other people aren't going to like them, or that they're going to sound stupid, or no one's going to listen, or they're not going to be able to get any guests or find other people, or they're not going to know what to do. And it's all just different forms of thinking that you're not good enough for whatever it is you're trying to do. So you just got to know, like, you are good enough. You can do it. Especially if you're listening to this and you're in the military, like anything that we did in the military is way harder and more mentally challenging than starting a podcast. At the end of the day, public speaking is one of everyone's secret worst fears is, getting up in front of a crowd and speaking. And if you're doing a YouTube channel or a podcast, like that's the same fear that you're tapping into, the fear of kind of getting up in front of people and sharing yourself. Yeah, don't let it stop you. Just know that everyone goes through it. And at the end of the day, you do have a lot to put out there. You do have a message to share. And there are a lot of people who could be helped, and go from there, and again, like if you just fucking can't stand write it or recording yourself, or you just can't stand being in front of a video, cool, do a blog. There's lots of blogs out there that get millions and millions of readers every day that make millions of dollars for their owners, so don't let it stop you. Don't make excuses. If you can't stand being on a mic or video, cool, like start a blog. There's no excuses out there anymore, and you just got to do it.
Try this one on for size, because I don't even remember where I heard this, but it stuck with me through the whole process, because I had a little bit of a fear of that. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, this has just been me and you having a conversation, right? So has the other 30 something, almost 40 something podcast episodes, but something somewhere made so much sense. And I'm not saying who it is, because I don't think like that, but your worst episode you've ever produced is out there. And if you think about that, and you have a growth mindset of learn from every other episode that you've done and push to be just a little bit better, try new things, experiment. But if you keep that in the back of your mind of like, you know what, the worst episode I've ever done is out there. Now, who knows what that is, or who knows who it's with, or why it's the worst. Maybe you just had a bad hair day, or maybe you just look like a mess on camera. Who knows? Or maybe we're stuttering all over the place. I don't know. If you kind of keep that in the back of your mind, then you're like, what's the harm? I mean, just get it recorded, do it, have the conversation. And, I don't know, to me, it kind of keeps you on the right path. Just realizing that, just to slowly get better over time.
Yep. That's it, man. 1% better every day.
Absolutely. It's the only way to go. So anyway, Paul, I appreciate you being here. I'll say once again before we leave, connect with Paul. His links and everything will be in the show notes, and it'll be on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Go like my Facebook page. My website is on the ending screen, and I'll show here in just a second. It's battlebuddypodcast.net. All of those links, once again, will be in the show notes. But most importantly, if you are having a hard time, the suicide prevention number will be on the screen here. It'll be posted in the show notes as well. It's also on the website. There's lots of places you can find it. So if you are having those kind of thoughts, please reach out and get some help, because we want our battle buddies here tomorrow. So go ahead and play this ending screen here.